Welcome to Chat with Me. Today is a very special episode with a very special woman. But I do want to let you know that this topic may be a little difficult to hear. It's going to be difficult for us to talk about, but you know what? That doesn't stop us because it's necessary. It's necessary for you to know. It's necessary for your children to know, to make sure that we can keep everybody as safe as possible. So with that said, let me introduce you to the wonderful, the intelligent, and the beautiful Stacy Burgess.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on Chat with Me.
I feel so honored that you're here today.
Oh, thank you.
It means so much to me, really, truly. I think it's a lot for someone to tell their personal story, but to tell their personal story in front of the camera and knowing that other people are going to see this. But the beauty behind why you do it, it just touches my heart, and I thank you for that.
Well, one thing I'd like you to know, I am honored that you're giving us, an opportunity to discuss, how to educate people on sex trafficking, but also for you to know that you're the first person outside of friends and family that I've shared this with.
No
so
pressure,
it may
Robin.
be a little difficult, but
We'll
I'm
be
here.
in this together.
Okay, yes.
We'll get each other through it.
Yes, absolutely.
So you have firsthand experience with human trafficking.
Yes, 4.5 years ago, my daughter was groomed and then subsequently taken by a sex trafficker. And it's been a long, hard road for me to be able to get here, to be able to discuss this, but I realize how important it is to try to get the message out and to educate others so that they know what to look for.
So how old was she at the time?
She was 16, and when the grooming had started...
Yeah, what did that look like? Tell me what this grooming looked like.
Well, I wasn't one of the parents who was naive to the internet dangers out there, and actually, myself and my ex-husband, we did have internet protection. We did have codes where our kids just couldn't, go freely.
Controls.
Yeah, parental controls. But what we didn't quite realize is the second you leave your home, all those controls are kaput. And
These kids are smarter and savvier than ever.
And you know what? They don't understand the dangers.
Correct.
And we're just dumb parents who don't get it. No, and they don't really understand that someone wants to hurt them. And with that being said, my daughter was at a youth group, girls empowerment sleepover. And it was a really great little program she was at. But while she was there and there was a break in their sessions, her and some of her other friends were on a friend's iPad. Hence, no security.
Parental security.
Correct. So with that, they were on the Kix app, K-I-K. Absolutely no reason for your child to ever be on the Kix app. And while it may have, some realm of usefulness in the internet world, there's no reason a minor should be on there, and predators actually look for children there. So long story short, my daughter and her other girlfriends were talking with boys on there, which of course that in itself isn't forbidden. She is 16, right? And but these predators are so savvy. What they do is they know to get them off these apps. And with that, they give a cell phone number that is obviously a burner number for my daughter to converse with. So she thought she was talking to a quarterback of a football team who was 17. She was so in awe with the fact that this boy liked her. Yeah. And some of this is me projecting, assuming this is how she felt, because, there are things that she still won't share. And with that, they began to converse and form a relationship online, and he, convinced her to send inappropriate pictures of herself. And once that was done, he used that as leverage.
Now I have this, I'm going to show people, I'm going to show your parents, or somehow get you in trouble.
Right. And so in the beginning, the pictures are used, just like you mentioned, to say, well, I'm going to show your parents. Well, I was a parent that, again, was not naive. And I was like, Michaela, there's no reason for you ever to send a picture of yourself. And please be leery of sending pictures of yourself with a logo of your school on it, with your home in the background, things like that. So we took it, we teach stranger danger, but sometimes the stranger, it doesn't work what you always teach them.
They're not always strangers.
Correct.
And they quickly, with this grooming, become not strangers.
Correct. And so with that being said, she did send the pictures. And once she sent the pictures, and because we had locks on her phone, they actually mailed her a phone through Amazon to our house, a burner phone.
Wow.
Yes. And with that, she communicated. And in the beginning, she thought this boy loved her. Mm-hmm. And this boy turned out to be a victim, not a victim. He turned out to be a predator. And he was on parole for raping a 12-year-old and had served 5 years in the Orange County jail system. So
and this is all stuff you find out after.
Oh, way after.
Way after. Not something anyone or she suspected.
Absolutely not. So, from there, it went to coercion to her of saying that, well, okay. I think that at one point she probably was like, fine, just tell my parents. She realized how in deep that she was. And then they threatened to put these pictures on the internet and such. And it came down to the point where they sent her a phone because she continued to lose the phone. And there was pictures of a boy being violated and a mom being violated and saying, if you don't leave with the man I sold you to, this is what will happen to your mom and your brother.
Oh my goodness.
And so she did.
In protection of her family, or what she thought was protection of her family, she went with them. Yes.
And it turns out that the picture she sent was to a man who was selling her on something called Backpage. And Backpage, and multiple men bid on her. And you think that they're the monsters in the closet, but one was a deacon of a church. Another was the man who actually won the bid, I guess we could say, was a manager at a Dairy King in, up north. So he ends up picking her up, and she gets into his car, and that was the last that we saw of her, and...
When did you find out she was even missing?
Well, that's what truly is a God moment. There were so many reasons we shouldn't have gotten our daughter back, and so many things that happened that told me that God wanted us, to find her. And I had just found out the night before my daughter went missing that my best friend was terminal in cancer. I was in la land that she was going to pull out of it. And so I went to bed very upset that night, woke up the next morning to get my daughter ready for the bus. I wake up, she's already up and ready, which is unheard of for a 16-year-old. And so I said to her, please come say goodbye. She comes, she kisses me, I look, she has pigtails, and I was like, oh, babe, I haven't seen your hair like that in a long time, To me, a mom radar should have, why did you do your hair? My daughter's the type, roll out of the bus.
Well, your body was already suffering. You were already in grief mode.
Yeah, so she leaves, she catches a bus to school. I get up a couple hours later, or probably an hour and a half later, with my son to get him ready for school. All of our doors in our homes are always closed because we have little dogs. And every FBI, DEA, everyone has asked me why I went into her room. I have no idea. I went into her room and nothing, it was awry. And no, I have no idea why, to this day, why I went into her room. I go in there, and as I'm leaving the room, I see my blanket, my favorite blanket. I was like, do you have my blanket? And I take it off the bed, and all her school books are under this blanket. And I'm like, oh, you little sneak, you're ditching. But some part of me knew that wasn't true.
There was some mommy intuition that said something bigger. And
bigger, yes, not only bigger, but that just wasn't right. My children, they could come to me with things like that, saying, Mom, everyone's going to the beach. I'm on honor roll. Why can't I go? And so there was no need to ditch. But so anyway, from there, I'm getting my son ready. We're going to school. I call her father. And I said, I don't think Michaela went to school. All her books are there. I call the school. The school's like, everyone's in assembly right now. We can't tell you. I'm like, you can't tell me if my daughter was in school. And they're like, well, we'll get back to you. I'm like, please do.
Yeah.
And also it was, ma'am, it's senior ditch day. So she probably is ditching. I'm like, again, back to the fact my child doesn't
She could have
need
told
to
me
ditch,
that.
you
She
know.
wouldn't have had to.
And they were treating me fairly, you know, not fair enough that like I was a mom who, you know, oh, my child wouldn't do that, you know, kind of thing. But I just knew something was wrong.
You're like, my kid wouldn't do it in that way.
Correct.
not
Yeah, exactly. So I drive my son to school. As I'm coming back, I'm calling the school saying, look, what's going on? You know, and before I even get an answer from them, I call my ex-husband back and he's like, well, you know, let's just wait till after school. I'm like, no. So I call the police and say my daughter is missing school. And they had the same attitude, senior ditch day things. I'm like, you need to meet me at the house.
Yeah.
So I was probably not as kind when I said it like that. So in the meantime, between me calling the police and driving home, the on-campus policeman calls me and he's like, oh, well, your daughter wasn't in class. I said, well, was she in first period? No. Now, you remember, high school starts it's been a couple hours. And I was like, well, did she ride the bus? And they tried, well, we don't take attendance on the bus. I said, the bus driver knows my daughter. My daughter bakes her blueberry muffins.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, we'll try to get a hold of him. I'm like, yes. Yeah. So police are at the house. He's kind of, you know, I'm not going to say not taking me seriously. He definitely was professional. He was kind, but it was kind of like, your daughter's ditching, own up to it, you know. So he goes in the room and you never realize how embarrassed you are till you see your child's room, your teenage daughter's room through the eyes of a police officer. And you're like, kicking things under the bed. So he looks around. He's like, well, can you tell if any flip-flops or bathing suits missing? I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, how do I know, you know, anything's missing? Something made me say, a couple days before my daughter had broken up with her boyfriend. And I remember thinking, wow, she's really maturing. There was no drama. He's like, well, we just realized we weren't, you know, we're better friends. I'm thinking, wow, that's really mature. And then I'm thinking, yeah, that's kind of not normal. And then I can tell where the police officer is leading towards this. Like, well, has your daughter been depressed? Has she been this? I was like, no, but she broke up with her boyfriend. So then he gets on the horn and then I can see that they're leaning towards suicide. And at that point, I'm still like, this isn't happening. Yeah. Hopefully my daughter really is ditching and I'm the naive mom that everybody is insinuating that I am. And so when it kind of, the investigation turned to looking for suicide, they were like, well, are there any empty houses in the neighborhood? Being a real estate agent with IPG, it's like, my kids know where the empty houses are. They accompany me to take pictures, much to their chagrin, you know? And so we walk up the road. He's like now calling the canine units. He's like, ma'am, we'd like you to go outside. He's looking in my attic. And I'm like, oh, this is happening.
Yes, right.
Like, wow. And at that point, my I don't remember really what transacted, but for some reason, my godson let me know that Michaela had posted a picture on Instagram that morning. And I could tell by the background, it wasn't done at our home. Okay. And so I either called her phone or some reason we knew, and her phone was at the house. And that's when I was...
And you were like, nope.
Sick to my... What 16-year-old girl leaves their phone at the house? And so I was feeding into the suicide. I was like, oh my God. Yeah. Have I been so self-absorbed with everything with Kim that I didn't see this? Is this what parents talk about when they say, well, I didn't know? You know, it's like, I didn't. And so the helicopters are there and the dogs are there, and I'm realizing, no, this isn't right. There's got to be more. She posted this picture. And the reason I knew it was that morning because she had the pigtails. And, she, you know, my daughter, like I said, she wore sweats.
What in the world flipped it? Well, how did you guys figure out that she had been taken?
So everyone's purging her room. My best friends are there. My mom makes it from Naples all the way up to where we live in 2.5 hours, unheard of. They're scouring her room looking for clues. My godson finds a piece of paper. We couldn't get into her phone, okay? And I'm like mad at myself because I'm always like, I have to know the code. Well, how many times, you know, you check that they've changed it, because normally like, hand me your phone and they've already opened it kind of thing. So we're looking for ways to get into the phone. She's also left her laptop there. As we're standing outside, because now they've decided they want to check my attic, I'm just knowing it wasn't suicide at this
Right.
point. And the weekend before, she had been at my mom's house, and she had said, "Mom, I mailed a letter to you and Dad." And I was like, "Okay." She goes, "Well, remember you always said that if I'm one event, that to put it into writing." And I was like, "Okay," and not really thinking about it. At that time, we're standing under my oak tree. This is another God moment. I see the
mailman?
The mailman. My mail has never come before 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. My entire time of living there. And this is the morning.
Right.
So another reason. I go and I said, at that time it triggered that she had mailed a letter. I go, it's in the mailbox. And I see this letter, I recognize her handwriting, and it's surreal.
Yeah.
I open this letter, it's on yellow paper, and just everything you
Never want to hear from your
hear
child.
is in this letter. And it's saying, "I love you, I love Flynn, I love Daddy. Tell GJ I love her. That's my mom. Tell Nanny and Grandpa. But Mommy, please change the alarm code on the house. You're not safe there. If you can move." And I'm thinking, what? But then the letter is very strange. It was like 3 pages. So at first you're reading it like this is
Like it's
suicide.
a suicide note.
But then you're like, you're not safe. They can get you. And I'm like, and so it's like almost sounding like paranoid.
Right.
I just fall to my knees and in the yard, and the police and my ex-husband take the letter, and I'm not going to say they didn't take it serious between them, but I think deep down that they really did believe it was a senior ditch day thing. As we're standing there and realizing the enormity of exactly what has occurred, my ex says, "What about the cameras in the community?" And I was like,
Right.
We look up, and the house across the street from us has cameras. I live in a section that has a lot of short-term rentals, vacation homes, and those people don't live there full time. So like, well, what about that camera over there? It's directly pointed at your house. I'm like, there's no one who lives there. I don't know how to get a hold of the owners in England. And then when my ex-husband says about the community cameras, I'm like, our neighbor is the president of the HOA. And the police say, well, we'll have to get a warrant. That can take some time. And I'm like, oh no, these people have known my daughter since she was a little girl. They're going to do it. Another God moment. My ex goes over there. The woman who's the wife of the president of the HOA is homesick.
Wow.
And she was normally worked in Orlando. I didn't even know their last names. I'm sure I could have found it, but I wouldn't even have known how to get a hold of them. But she doesn't know how to run the camera system. Her husband, who I think he either worked in Lakeland or Tampa or something, happens to be at Walgreens getting her medicine. Another God thing. He's like, I'm coming home. He helps my ex. But while they're doing that, I'm sitting with my friends around the table with our computers saying, somebody has to know something. And so I was so freaked out of the fact that she left her phone. And she posted that it's like she has something somewhere. So I started texting all of her friends, but I didn't have everyone's number. And that's one thing I will tell parents, that even though you know your children's friends, make sure that you know their last names and you have their cell phone numbers. Because a lot of times we're like, hey, call your friends, see if we don't have that number. Yep. And I'm like, Alex, what's Alex's last name again? You're in a moment of panic. You have no way that you're gonna nothing. So I reverted to going on Facebook, and I start messaging. Look, Michaela is missing. I need your help. No one's in trouble. Please tell me the last time you've heard from her. No one's really responding. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Same time, I'm like, well, maybe she is still with friends. I think that was before the letter. So we start reaching out.
Hope. You always have to have that kind of hope.
Yes. And so I'm like, I need to find out if her friends are in school, and again, the police are like, well, we'll have to get a subpoena. I'm like, no, I know teachers here. They're going to tell me if my child's friends are in school. So, we start reaching out to people, and we find out all their friends are in school. So then I'm messaging them on Facebook. Back then, Instagram wasn't really big. Snapchat was coming up. I didn't know really how to contact. So on Facebook, I'm messaging. And so I said, just tell me the last numbers Michaela called you from. people start coming back with phone numbers, and then we try it, and I was like, oh no, that's her dad's phone. Oh, that's my phone. Oh, that was her grandma's phone. A number. So one of her friends gives us a number. I call it. Hi, this is Kayla, which my daughter's name is Michaela, not Kayla. You know what to do. It's not her phone, but it's a different phone number. So we instantly give that phone to the police. And at this point, they're pretty much, ma'am, why don't you just have a seat? Let us do our jobs. I was like, I just knew that it was so much to delve into. There's no way that they know my daughter or her friends like I do. Right. And so if I don't even know where to begin, how do they know where to begin? So that's why we just spent a lot of time online. And my godson is in my daughter's room and opens up a book, and there's a piece of school paper with all kinds of things written on it that could have been passwords. So my goddaughter's there. So we're at a round table. It's this, me, my best friend, Elsa, my goddaughter, Lauren, godson, Michael, myself, my other best friend, Tina. She's in there cleaning my house because that's what she does. My mom's on her way. My ex is dealing with the HOA video. And so they just started putting these passwords in, and they get into her computer. And these weren't passwords my daughter would have made. They weren't like my birthday, your birthday, mom. It was like someone told her to make these. So when they get into it, I then start like, where do we begin? There's no like app that we see that's, prominent. There's no like, we're looking at emails. They don't, we're looking at deleted. We're normal people with insurmountable information there for us to try to delve through. And so all of a sudden, I'm going back on Facebook. And I was like, what apps are you kids on nowadays? What is it that you guys are on? I will not tell your parents. Please help me. And so somebody came back and said Kicks. Don't remember who again. And we find it.
And Kicks. You had not heard of this before.
I had not heard of it. And again, I wasn't a naive parent, but these new apps come out so quickly. Fast. It's like you don't realize. So we're going on this. You don't even really know what you're looking at because there's not a picture of you, Robin, and a picture of Stacy saying, look who we're conversing. It's an emoji of your dog and me with whatever I want, Chanel lipstick, what the emoji. So we're going through tons and tons of chats, thousands of pages, I'm assuming, if you would have printed it out. And we're realizing there's no way the police are going to say anything, but some reason we knew. That was the only thing on her computer and on her phone that was different. And so, and we obviously knew she didn't communicate from her phone because she left that and took the other one. So on the computer, we're reading, we all now have this up, and we're reading through all of it. And it's like, oh, do you think I should paint my nails purple? Right. Oh, I don't like so-and-so. He hurt my feelings. Oh, isn't he cute? And you're like, oh my God, you're just going through this. Yes. And then, and then the police come in. And at this time, my good friend, Tina had said, we need to put a missing on Facebook. And I'm like, still worried about privacy. I'm worried about and I'm like, at this point, do whatever it takes. Because you don't, my daughter is missing now. It's not a what if. Yeah. And there's tons of police there. There's I guess DEA was the original department that handled missing kids and things at that point. But people there, and I'm not really realizing what's going on. I just see people milling around and chatting outside, and I'm like, where's my daughter? Find her. And when I gave them the phone number, they dinged it to Atlanta at that time. And I'm like, oh my God, she's out of this. I'm envisioning she's at the Florida Mall. Right. You know what I mean? Like, you still don't grasp what's occurring. Yeah. And I'm like, holy mackerel. So when my friend put this out on Facebook, overwhelming response of love, caring from friends who then made missing posters, canvassed all the way up 75 and I-4 at all the stops there. And I don't even know any of this till after. So with that, the police come in. Who's Tina? And like, pull that down. We're getting all these false leads and questions, and it's using our manpower. And I'm like, no. I'm sorry. And they're like, and I said, I'm calling my son's godfather was in marketing at Disney, and he's like, well, I know press. I'm like, call them. And then I agreed not to call anyone until first the hard deadline was 5, and then we moved it till 6, because in my mind I could not fathom the thought my daughter being gone after dark.
Right.
So this happens in the morning.
Yeah.
And so we're looking. Now my ex comes back with a picture from of the car. And you see my daughter get into the car. You see you can't see the make and model. You just know it's a sedan. It's dark. And it looks like there's front and rear license plates. But you can't see a full license plate number. So now we're thinking, oh, they're going to get her now. Put an Amber Alert out. You can't do that. You can't just say, hey, it's a kind of a dark car and there's a guy and a girl in it. Can you please? She's in Atlanta. You have to have a plate. You have to have a make and model of a car. So, all these resources you think you have nothing without this information. And so my godson, his dad got there at this time, the Bouchards, and they are sitting down and they're Googling makes of cars, and they're looking at the pictures and trying to line up and my ex is doing it, line up the back of the lights. And so they got this idea of calling one of our friends' friend, and he, who worked for a dealership, and said, hey, do you know the make of this car? He goes, no, but send it to so-and-so. Send it. So now this whole world is going of people looking for her, but it still feels surreal.
Yeah.
And it's so, people are like, well, were you in pain? Were you this? I was like, no, the police pretty much wanted me to take a Xanax and sit on the couch. Now, they didn't say that, but they're like, let us do our job. And I was just like, no.
Yeah.
And I think it was more of I was going to lose it if I just sat there. I had to think of something.
And like you said, you knew her better than anyone else. You knew her friends.
Yes.
You knew what,
And so at that point, my goddaughter, she's looking through the kicksack. I know I'm all over the place because this is how it was.
Right.
It wasn't just let's do this and then let's do that. It's
whatever.
Everyone's doing all these things.
What did you find?
Starts reading and she's like, Stacy, listen to this. And she's like, oh yes, I live where there's you can see from my backyard a quarter horse farm. My daughter loved horses. Mm-hmm. This was the other reason, Robin, that I couldn't believe that she would just leave willingly with somebody, like the picture looked like, or that she was a runaway, because my daughter was animal crazy. She had a horse named Ivory that she loved. She had just gotten a new puppy 2 months ago. I'm like, she wouldn't leave without the puppy. She wouldn't. I mean, she might leave us, but she's not going to leave her animals. And so I just kept hanging on to, which didn't make it any better, but it just made something. Yeah. So then she starts reading this and she's like, oh, and you can kind of tell by the way the person's speaking that it's a man. Not a man, a male. Okay. And it was like, oh, my daughter also, even at 16, loved Build-A-Bear, loved, things. She was like that. She, loved things like that. And he's like, oh, and it's like 30 minutes from my house is a Build-A-Bear place. So we're like, is this real? And at the same time, before that, he had given her a phone number that we realized it was the same person because the icon kept changing. So you didn't realize there was a conversation there. So we're Googling, we're remembering, we're going off the assumption that the front license, there was a front and back license plate. So when you Google what states have front, right, and what states have Build-A-Bear and a quarter horse farm, or I don't even know if it was some type of unique horse. I mean, it wasn't
right
what I'm saying, because I still can't remember to this day. Just like I can't remember the make and model of the car.
Well,
and I refuse to read the police reports.
Yes, your brain has to remember what it needs to know for the safety of your daughter.
So now they get this other phone number, and we're convinced the other phone number was him because, again, something tied it in. They ping it in the same place. But now the phone number of my daughter is no longer active, like it's dead. So they put out an all-point bulletin for what the person, for be on the lookout, but we don't have the make and model of the car still. So now some lead came in from somebody from a car dealership where we had text that said, oh, hey, those are LED lights. I can tell how they're glowing. So only
This model.
this year and this year, between this year and this year, are cars that did that make and model. Because we were going after the assumption it was a black car because it was dark. You know, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, so it was, or 6 or whatever, so it was still dark out. And that kind of narrowed it down.
Yeah.
And so then from there, it was like, okay, LED lights, it could only be this, this, and this that had them on that year. And from there, all of a sudden, we got another clue that said, I'm just saying this, it was a Camry. I don't remember what it was.
Whatever
a Camry.
it is, right.
Well, Camrys only came in Gabe and gray and this, not black. Google that, boom, backlights match the picture we have. So now we have something to go off of. The police are like, well, we can only put out a partial. I'm like, just do what you,
Right,
you know.
put out whatever you
And
can.
I'm making the police sound like they were twiddling their thumbs. They were not.
No, I don't feel like you are, but you're giving us what it was like for you.
Yes, and the whole time, and then at some point, the police came in because I think we were doing updates on Facebook.
Okay.
We're looking for the car, and I think we posted the car or something on Facebook, and the police come running in there. Take that down. If they know, whoever has her knows that we're onto them, they can kill her and dump her. And then my ex, you're going to get her killed. And I was, what do you do?
Right.
What is the right answer?
We need to find her, but we can't
Right.
alert them.
And so we agreed not to post anything else. We agreed not to answer anyone's questions on the false. They were worried that someone was asking questions and they would post the answers.
Okay.
So we stopped all communication with anybody who was outside the home at that time. And the police were not happy that we had posted. And you don't think of those things. And so from there, they put out an all points. Well, somebody spots her and him in another state going out of arrest stop.
Oh my goodness.
And so at least at this point, you knew she was alive. And at this point, because we're still going off of the front and back license plates, that we think that they're staying on the side of the United States, not going to an airport and flying, you're like, I mean, this is like a scene out of Taken, but this is happening in the United States. This is happening in Orlando.
It's not even like Taken. That was like a violent, they grab and run. This is slow. They take their time. They're meticulous. They groom. That's the word that we constantly use.
Yes.
And then they convince them that the only way for them or for their families to survive is for them to leave.
Yes, and I mean, we are actually shooting through the Greenhand Project a documentary, and it's going to not only lay out the story, but it's going to show some other facts and then the aftermath. And so, fast forward, we do find my daughter.
Okay.
And with that...
And how much time was it from when she left?
A day. Yeah,
okay.
So...
But it was because of your diligence and because of...
I think some of the earlier discoveries of things, and the fact that I found out that Michaela was gone right away.
Right.
Because remember the blanket in the books? I would not have known my daughter was gone until about 8 o'clock that night because my son had basketball that night. Normal practice is when she gets out of the bus, she's supposed to say, hey, Mom, I'm home. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes the phone dies or I forgot. Right. So by then I would have been like, hey, Mick, what's going on? And she wouldn't have answered. And then I would have been like, oh, my gosh, she's taking a nap. She better not sleep too long because she needs to sleep tonight. You know what I mean? And it's like so many normal reactions. And then I would have been at basketball and I would have not been worried. Yeah. I would have been like, are you kidding? It's 6 o'clock now. Are you still asleep? Why are you not talking to me?
Walk me through how she got back home to you.
It was, so we found the make and model of the car. He turned his phone back on. They put out an all points bulletin, be on the lookout for my daughter and such and such. Didn't know who it was, at the time, because I think it was a burner cell. I don't really remember exactly that. And they said, don't pull over. Just be advised. Look at this. So some police officer, thank you, saw them in Kentucky and pulled the car over. When the police pulled the car over, my daughter jumped out of the car and ran. And in his trunk was Visqueen, handcuffs, zip ties, and a set of like knives that he bought at.
What is Visqueen?
Like plastic wrap.
Oh,
Like a whole bunch of plastic wrap. His name was John Rush, and he purchased her, had her sign a sex contract, and pretty much she feared for her family's life. But I think that she also had guilt. So we got her back, and in Kentucky, by the grace of God, and you know, it's been hard. We didn't even know there was another person who, the original contact wasn't John Rush. Right. It was the other guy. His name was Fred Lucius. He's a career criminal, and we're still fighting to this day him. He's been in jail this whole time, but he raped another person while he was out. That court case had to come first. He was found guilty of that, but because he has nothing to lose, he's decided to become his own lawyer.
How's Michaela?
Not good. She's Michaela.
Yeah.
They say when you have a trauma in life that your age kind of stops at that. And that was, the trauma started when she was 15. If you look at pictures, I was showing Scott, a friend of mine from Greenhand Project, pictures, and it was like 2 days before she went to that, you know, to the sleepover. And just, you know, goofy, happy, you know, you just see the light in her eyes. And then you just see it go. And I knew something was wrong. But at that time we were having struggles of, you know, divorce. You know,
and
her
she
dad
had a
was
boyfriend she had broken up with.
Exactly.
And you had a dear friend with cancer. So there was stuff to feel.
There was stuff. And, you know, she had a little brother and, you know, he bugged her and stuff. And she's first years in high school. So it's kind of like everything people say to, like, well, you know, those are teenage girls. I was like, okay, I guess so. Because she was never defiant to me. She was never really a problem. I mean, the reason her brother exists is because she was an ideal child. You know? So it was just, you know, it's so scary that your life can be altered. And these kids today don't understand.
They don't.
And they think that, well, what's the big deal? I'm sending these pictures, but then now these people have ammunition. And these sex traffickers, they go about it a different way with a boy. And we spell that out in some of our educational, you know, seminars as well that we're doing. But our whole goal with Greenhand Project, and it's taken me 4.5 years to get strong enough to share this story. And hopefully the message is that education is key.
Yes.
And how do we tell our children about something so sensitive, so scary, so vile at a young age? But we have to.
We have to.
Yes.
And there's ways to make it age appropriate. There's certain things that they can handle at certain ages. And unfortunately, with the access that they have, like you're saying, with all these apps and the different things, you have to tell them.
You not only have to tell them, Robin, but it's scaring them and no longer working. They've been exposed to things on social media and stuff that in our day, it has desensitized them. But the fact of the matter is there is ways. And we've come up with an incredible education system that we're trying to get into the schools free of charge, might I add, with an actual book. And it's not even looking at sex trafficking. It's like third removed. It's like, what do you see there? And we're trying to raise money right now to print these books, hard-covered, you know, picture books for kids.
Wonderful.
So that they can look at this and then maybe as they're looking at this book, which has nothing really to do with sex trafficking, but then when they hear the education, it ties it in. And then taking a step further, parents, what do you need to look for? Admin, what do you need to look for? I'd like to take it all the way where we're eradicating you know, this horrible, horrible epidemic. Did you know we're number 3? I mean, Orlando was number 3. like home of Mickey Mouse and sex trafficking.
Right.
Oh my God, that's horrible.
It's horrible.
And it's because of the mass amount of people that come here.
Mm-hmm.
But people are noticing, but they don't know
Yes.
what they're noticing. So we have to educate them. So when they see a man who, or woman who doesn't look right with kids who don't fit that and things are strange, that they know a number to call. Because it's not just helpful to call 911. Because 911's like, okay, they got their hands full. We need special lines set up that they can call. We need places that they can go if they do escape this.
Right.
Parents think, my child's home, so this isn't happening to them. I'm sorry, Stacy, this happened to your daughter, but it's not happening to mine. That's not true. What's happening nowadays is that they're grooming these kids and they're allowing them to go home. And they're saying, you need to join the soccer team. But on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you miss traffic and I'll see you here. Horrible things are happening. They're giving them drugs so that they slowly get addicted. And what they're trying to see is their worth. How much money am I making from this child? How much pushback from that family am I getting? Is this kid worth us pulling out?
Yeah.
So noticing right up front what's going on with your child, the second there's a change, knowing who they're hanging out with. And a lot of times it's an older teenager or young adult who's introducing them into this, who was a victim themselves, but now has turned around and is a predator because
it's all they know.
That's all, or they don't want the abuse to them, so they're bringing other people in the folds. I was privy to some information where there was a 12-year-old girl who was being sex trafficked in Orlando, and I personally watched her go in and out of one of the convention centers on I-Drive. And I'm like, why is that bellman, does he not notice these young girls going in there? Like, does he not notice that? And why are they knowing what floor to go up to? What is going on? What for $20 you're looking the other way, and it's, there are people who are seeing things, and there are people who are profiting from it. So
absolutely.
We need to make it harder. We need to make harder laws and bigger penalties and consequences for people who turn the other way. Because in a tourism industry, somebody sees. Somebody sees these little girls going up to a man's hotel room. And there's nowhere in any book that that's okay. And young boys, might I add.
Oh, absolutely. Boys, definitely. So how can people find out a little bit more about the Greenhands project?
Well, right now we are in the process of filming, we're almost done filming the documentary on Michaela's story, as well as the fact Made to Educate. And we are trying to get our educational piece into some of the school districts. So what we ask is that if you have any connections or want to know the story or want to learn more or help educate parents, children, administration, then reach out to greenhandproject.org. We're on Facebook as well, and you just never know which way you can help,
By you telling your story, as difficult and as insane as it is for you to have to relive it, it's helping. So I appreciate you so much, and I appreciate you opening up here today and telling us your story.
Well, thank you for giving us the platform to reach hundreds of thousands of people through social media, because one thing is, social media caused this, but social media brought my daughter back, and the platform of social media also will get the message out.
Right.
So,
and it's there to stay.
It is.
So we have to work around it, and we have to learn to teach everyone how to focus and to make sure that we protect our children.
Yes, and exactly. It's like, it's very scary to think that behind arms and drugs, our children have a value as a sex trafficking item. That's so scary.
But it's there, and it's real, and it's happening. It happened to her child. We don't want it to happen to anyone else's child. So let's learn, let's be aware, let's be constantly checking and seeing what types of apps are out there, how they're being used, and talk to your children. And check out the Greenhand Project. And as she said, if there's any way that you can support that project in becoming what it is meant to be in educating and being in the schools, then please reach out and let us know. And I thank you again.
Thank
you
you
for being here. And thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, take care of yourselves and don't forget to take care of each other.